Building garden beds has some consistent challenges. We don't want to move more dirt than we have to, and often there's pre-existing plants in place that we have to build around. The blood orange over here and the grapevine above. Use the dirt as part of my formwork. We'll be able to pour it out with concrete and have a really solid foundation.
Close the door and leave the light on. The morning light should be coming soon. Kick off your shoes and leave the winter and the pain it brings to you. Lay your head upon my shoulder. Shut off your thoughts and clear your mind.
Well, we're going to be building a retaining wall out of our treated timber sleepers. It's part of the structure of this terrace rock garden that wraps around this blood orange tree. Before we continue the construction of the treated timber part of this project, we have to do an excavation of a drainage system that we installed in the previous retaining wall that exits out of the top of the walls we're building here. We also had to put some plumbing in. All the water that gets trapped behind the wall, like in a dam, and that'll come down here. We installed this 90mm pipe under our formwork so it would be buried under the gravel path. These drainage pipes were left long in the previous project, so now we have to excavate them and trim off the ends so they're going to fit in the staircase system that we're building now. Later in this project, we're going to be redirecting this drainage system underneath the stair pathway we're constructing. But for now, we just need to trim them shorter so they're out of the way of the garden step we're going to be constructing. After removing enough dirt from around these pipes, we trim them down with our reciprocating saw. Managing where the rainfall and water goes in these terrace systems is critical. We don't want to over-waterlog garden beds or create any flooding on our pathways. I want a clean 90-degree cut on these pipes so it's easy to glue on the 90-degree bends we'll be putting on later. This part of the staircase wall system is all built around this blood orange tree. We're creating 2 terrace steps that are a combination of concrete, stone and treated timber. These treated timber elements are going to be like retaining walls for the stone and concrete that'll be coming later. The stepped garden beds we're building now tie into the staircase. The staircase has 4 steps and there's 2 terrace gardens, so they line up evenly. Building garden beds has some consistent challenges, one of which is the terrain. We don't want to move more dirt than we have to, and often there's pre-existing plants in place that we have to build around. So this adds a bit of trickiness to the whole situation. In this particular case, we're building it from the top down. I set the main beam plumb along the edge of the shed, and then we're filling out this step system underneath it as we go. I'm adding some topsoil back into the step we've just completed so this blood orange tree can settle into its new home. Having mature trees in your hardscape system really adds an extra quality to them when they're finished.
Take my hand, lead me to the promised land, where it's built to last, where the river runs. Soak my skin, cleanse the guilt I feel within. Promise everything, take me home.
This morning we're going to continue on with this staircase we're putting together, which is a combination of concrete, stone and treated timber. The box in the blood orange over here and the grapevine above, the staircase coming down beside it. With the treated timber element complete, we're going to move on to creating the concrete foundation for this staircase system. I'll do this by creating removable timber forms to mould this staircase with stone and concrete. I'm setting our forms on top of the previous foundation that we poured. This whole system will be small concrete foundation pours on top of each other until we get to the top of our staircase. I'm going to be excavating some more dirt before we build these forms. When you're building a step system into a hillside like this, I often use the dirt as part of my formwork. So if we cut a step in carefully and build the timber around it, we'll be able to pour it out with concrete and have a really solid foundation step. These chickens really love it when I dig up some dirt because they get all the worms and bugs inside the dirt.
I'll stake my claim right here where I stand.
I like it when these guys show up. They always remind me to take a break, get present, and enjoy what I'm doing. I take my time with this process and work carefully. We don't want to cave in this dirt hill. We're trying to get nice, crisp cutouts for our concrete pour. This next foundation is where our first step is going to be formed. I finish up this excavation by smoothing off the top of this first step. Our concrete foundation is now set up hard enough for me to remove the formwork. I need these timbers out of my way to continue the next part of our process. I'm using my reusable form panels to build a wall that's going to contain the stone part of this system. It connects into the concrete step part of the form. I continue to check the measurements as I'm building this form to make sure I'm keeping this staircase parallel, and we double check with our square to keep everything plumb. After completing the construction of this form for the first step, we start adding our foundation stones for the part of the wall that's going to be under the blood orange tree. We're constructing this natural stone wall section the same way we've built all the natural stone walls in this project so far. Here I'm fitting the last stone in this bottom row of foundation stones. I've selected cube-shaped stones that are all roughly the same height to get the bottom of this wall started. But because the stones never fit perfectly together, I'm adding a couple of smaller stones to fill the gaps. I always take my time with this process, as these stones are going to be exposed in the final product, and they have to look good as well as being strong. After adding gravel chips to the small gaps, this completes this section of our wall. We're now ready to add some rebar before we put our concrete in. I'm using relatively light rebar mesh for this part of the system, so we can cut it with bolt cutters instead of the grinder. You can add a lot of strength to the system by bending the rebar around corners, especially when you're doing a step configuration. I like to bend the pieces of rebar so it'll sit flat and then bend up to the vertical position to create a really solid step. I'm also bending the rebar around this bottom corner to give it extra strength. The final thing I need to do before we pour concrete is add some gravel bedding to the base of all our forms. This is going to help the drainage once the concrete's set up. As we've done many times throughout this project, we're mixing the concrete out the front, then bringing it in with plastic tubs on the wheelbarrow. I'm using my standard mix for the start of this process, which is a normal concrete 6:1 Portland cement and gravel with an additive of 1 shovel load of mortar and our pigment. It's critical to work this into all the nooks and crannies because this is going to create the base for the stones sticking to the foundation. We work our way along the wall and fill all these stone components before we start moving on to the solid concrete part of the step. The concrete we're using for the backfill is just a standard concrete mix. I don't bother putting pigment in because the pigment's quite expensive, and the backfill concrete will never be seen in the final process. It's important to agitate this concrete around all our reinforcement bar and onto the back of our stones to get a really good adhesion. Pouring the concrete for this whole bottom step and wall configuration all together was kind of complicated, but it gives us extra strength having this whole system poured in one concrete pour. The concrete form I'm filling here is actually a foundation for the hollow block wall that runs up the side of the staircase. I wanted to incorporate these three elements all with the one foundation. By tying them all together, it's going to make a really strong retaining system. Now that I've got a good bed of concrete throughout the entire form system, it's just a matter of us filling the entire thing up to the top. I periodically tap the whole formwork with my hammer to help get the air bubbles out and get a really solid finish on the inside of our forms. Once we've filled the concrete to just slightly under the top of the forms, we smooth it off with our trowel and let it set up for the next stage. I have to reinstall this bird feeder that I removed during the construction process of the natural stone wall under the deck. I'm going to have to cut the steel pole down as we change the configuration of the wall, so I need to lose a couple of 100 mil off the top of it.
When your heart's run tight and your love's run dry, nothing you can do when you can't deny. Every day ends up just the same. In a cold Montgomery rain, we're feeling like a smoking gun, trying to find a reason, but I ain't got a one. Taking me down, wash away the pain. In a cold Montgomery rain.
We just needed to reassemble this bird feeder now that we've got that stone wall started below.
Cleanse the guilt I feel within. Promise everything. Take me home.
Join me on the next episode as we continue another course of a natural stone wall under the deck.
I'm running out of time.
I'm doing everything I can
To shape my destiny, to be the best of me.
I'll stake my claim right here where I stand.
When your heart's done trying and your lungs run dry, there's nothing you can do when you can't deny. Every day ends up just the same. In the cold Montgomery rain, words ring out like a smoking gun, trying to find a reason, but I ain't got one. Taking me down, wash away the pain. In the cold Montgomery rain.
Thanks for joining me this week in my YouTube channel. Check the link below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button or make a comment so I can help you with your future construction solutions. And don't forget to follow our channel for more ideas and how-to tips for home and garden projects.